There's a sacred hush that falls between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. The world outside slumbers deeply, completely unaware, undisturbed. Yet, for the rare few who stir, the very sky seems to whisper. This isn't simply about waking up early, it's about waking up within. It's about seizing that profound quiet before the day's relentless rush takes hold. This is the precious hour when your soul finally gets to breathe, uncluttered by the world's cacophony. You see, true healing rarely announces itself with a shout. Growth doesn't come with fanfare, and clarity certainly doesn't bang on your door. Instead, they arrive in stillness, in a gentle act of surrender. It's when you sit alone in the dark, truly listening, that your heart finally speaks truths you've been too busy, too distracted, to hear all day. This hour is for that. Many believe that between 3 and 5 in the morning, a divine presence feels closest. Not because it moves nearer to us, but because we finally move away from the clamor, the ego, the constant performance. In this quiet, we meet ourselves stripped bare, without the masks we wear for the world. Waking up early has, unfortunately, become a mere buzzword, tossed around in productivity circles as some magical key to success. But the 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. window isn't about ticking off tasks or getting a jump start on your emails. This isn't a performance. It's not a badge for hustling harder. It's a profound return to presence. It's the moment you consciously choose yourself, before the world begins to demand its daily pieces of you. This kind of rising isn't for the grind, it's for grounding. It's not about leaping into action, but about reconnecting with your deepest intentions, safeguarding your energy before it fragments into 100 different directions. In these pre-dawn hours, the world asks nothing of you. There are no immediate responsibilities, no looming meetings, no endless scrolling feeds subtly dictating who you should be. It's just you, the steady rhythm of your breath, and the hushed pulse of the new day. In that stillness, you can finally feel the true cadence of your own life again. You rise not to get ahead, but to return to your core values, your innate clarity, your essential peace. This profound presence can't be bought, faked, or rushed. You must seek it out in the quiet. You must be willing to rise when it's inconvenient. You must desire your own truth more than your fleeting comfort. Presence is a different beast entirely from mere awareness. You can be aware all day long, aware of your tasks, your deadlines, your goals, and still feel numb, utterly disconnected inside. But presence, true presence, is sacred. It's about being fully, unequivocally, with yourself in this very moment. No distractions, no pretense. It's showing up not as the version the world expects, but as the version of you that exists before any expectation ever touched you. And that version, it's quieter, more tender, and often buried deep beneath layers of noise. You won't stumble upon it at noon in a bustling room. You'll find it in the dark, when the world is still and your soul begins to gently stir. This unique kind of rising teaches you to slow down before the day accelerates you. It carves out space for you to consciously decide how you want to engage with the world, rather than simply reacting to it. Instead of waking up and being immediately pulled into the frantic timelines of others, you anchor yourself firmly in your own. You start to lead your day, instead of being led by it. And that leadership doesn't always manifest as loud or outwardly impressive. Sometimes, it's as quiet as taking a deep, deliberate breath. Sometimes, it's as simple as choosing not to check your phone first thing. Sometimes, it's choosing a thought that brings you peace over one that ignites panic. That, right there, is presence. That is power. You begin to grasp that rising early isn't about doing more. It's about being more. Being more attuned to your own energy. Being more conscious of the way you speak to yourself. Being more deliberate in what you choose to carry into your day. Productivity without presence is just performance, and performance without purpose is inherently empty. But when you begin your day rooted in intention, everything else naturally aligns. You don't have to chase meaning. It quietly, patiently follows you, because you've consciously created space for it. There's something ancient, almost primordial, about waking before the sun. It connects you to something far grander than algorithms and to-do lists. It connects you to the vastness of the sky, to the subtle rhythm of the earth, to the profound silence of your ancestors who once prayed and reflected under the very same stars. You feel like a vital thread in a much larger tapestry of time. Not because you're achieving more, but because you're remembering more. Remembering who you truly are, why you're here, and what genuinely matters, before the world's endless noise tries to convince you otherwise. And when you carry that cultivated presence into your day, you move differently, you speak differently, you listen differently. Because you're no longer merely existing, you're living, truly, from the inside out. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the world lies swaddled in a heavy blanket of stillness. Streets are deserted. Phones are utterly silent. No one's calling, no one's posting, no one's watching. There's a profound calm that stretches across the sky, a whisper audible only to those brave enough to listen. And in that sacred calm, something profound shifts. The constant barrage of distractions melts away, leaving you alone, not lonely, but profoundly alone, with your thoughts, your breath, and your truth. This silence isn't just an external absence of sound, it begins to seep deep inside you. You start to perceive things you simply couldn't in the clamor of the day. Thoughts you've buried, feelings you've meticulously ignored, dreams you've silenced, they all begin to rise up like delicate smoke in the still air, gentle yet undeniable. This specific slice of morning is unlike any other. It's not just early, it's pure, untouched, sacred. There's no looming expectation, no pressure to perform, no compulsion to be anything other than exactly who you are. The masks we meticulously construct and wear all day long, strong, busy, happy, productive, they simply fall away. What remains is raw, unfiltered honesty. You see yourself for who you truly are, not the person the world dictates you should be. There's no applause, no audience, just your soul, finally unmuted. And that is its profound power. The external silence creates the necessary space for your internal truth to finally speak. Most people instinctively fear silence. They quickly fill it with music, with incessant chatter, with endless scrolling. But in those quiet pre-dawn hours, there's nowhere to hide. You either bravely face yourself, or you remain asleep, both literally and figuratively. When you consciously choose to rise into that silence, you're not just waking from physical sleep, you're waking from autopilot. You begin to notice the insidious thoughts that sneak in without permission. You confront the emotions you've been suppressing and acknowledge the dreams you've indefinitely postponed. It's rarely comfortable, to be honest, but it is profoundly real. And it's in that unflinching realness that true healing begins. There's also a strange, quiet strength in being awake when the rest of the world is not. Not a superiority, but an availability, an openness to your own spirit. This availability unlocks doors. Ideas flow with greater clarity. Decisions feel less clouded, less burdened. Your heart, instead of frantically racing to keep pace with life, finally gets its chance to speak. And if you listen closely, you'll hear what it's been trying to tell you all along, that you're tired, that you're hopeful, that you're scared, that you're brave, that you are, against all odds, still standing. All of it rises up in the silence, simply asking to be noticed. At this hour, there's no distracting noise to drown out your intuition. No roaring traffic, no urgent emails, no deadlines breathing down your neck. Just breath, just life, just you. You begin to remember things you'd forgotten in the hurried rush. You recall what truly matters, who truly matters. You vividly remember your younger self, the one who dared to dream fearlessly. You see the gap between who you are and who you're meant to be, not as a judgment of failure, but as an open invitation to gently close that gap, one quiet morning at a time. In this profound silence, even your fears begin to transform. They shed their monstrous guise and reveal themselves as messages, guiding you towards what needs healing, what needs letting go, what desperately needs your courage. The world during the day screams at you to move faster, to achieve more, but this silence gently urges you to slow down, to feel, to simply be. It's in this sacred space that clarity finds you, not with an explosive revelation, but with a soft, persistent knock on your soul's door. And when you open it, you don't necessarily find immediate answers. You find yourself. Prayer, in these early hours, transcends ritual or routine. It's not the kind of prayer you perform out of habit or obligation. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., prayer transmutes into something utterly different, a conversation, raw and completely unedited. It's not polished or rehearsed. You don't prepare for it with flowery words or formal gestures. It's messy. It's intensely real. It's simply you, showing up exactly as you are, tired, broken, hopeful, confused, grateful, scared, all of it, without a single filter. In the profound quiet of the early morning, you're not performing for anyone. No one is listening, save for the one who already intimately knows the depths of your heart. This is the kind of honesty that only the protective cloak of night can draw out of you. There's a unique quality to darkness. It creates an unspoken space for vulnerability. When the world is sound asleep and your protective guard is finally down, those layers simply peel back on their own. You don't even have to force it. You just breathe, and suddenly, you're articulating things you didn't even realize you needed to say. Your heart begins to speak before your mind has a chance to censor it. It whispers pains you've quietly carried. It cries out for strength, for comfort, for a deep understanding. And instead of feeling embarrassed or weak, you feel profoundly seen, not by human eyes, but by the divine. In that singular moment, you realize that prayer isn't about uttering the right words. It's about speaking the true ones. You don't need to kneel perfectly. You don't need to recite flawless verses. Sometimes, prayer is simply sitting still and breathing. Sometimes, it's shedding tears without uttering a single word. Sometimes it's asking why, again and again, until you're left with nothing but profound silence. And that silence, too, becomes an integral part of the prayer. It articulates what words never could. It is the very language of the soul when it has exhausted all syllables. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., that silence is rich, full. It holds more emotion, more meaning, than 1,000 meticulously crafted speeches. And in that stillness, you begin to grasp that prayer is far more than a request. It's a living relationship, a lifeline, a sacred space you return to, not to be fixed, but to be deeply held. People often assume prayer is about manipulating your circumstances. But in these sacred hours, you learn that it's actually about transforming your perspective. You lay your burdens down, not with the expectation that they'll magically vanish, but so they don't crush you entirely. You surrender, not because you're giving up, but because you trust in a strength far greater than your own. And in doing so, you are no longer alone in your struggle. You're no longer carrying your pain in isolated silence. You're handing it over, piece by delicate piece, to something immeasurably bigger, kinder, and infinitely more patient. There's a profound peace that gently wraps itself around you when you pray at this time. It doesn't always arrive instantly, nor is it always dramatic, but it comes. Sometimes it manifests as a clear answer. Other times, it's a deep sense of release. And sometimes it's simply a breath, the kind that comes a little easier than before. It truly doesn't matter how you pray. It doesn't matter if your voice trembles or if your words completely fall apart. What truly matters is that you show up, that you allow your protective walls to crumble, that you speak or cry or simply sit there in silence, hands open, and your heart even more so. The world constantly pushes you to be strong, to keep moving, to pretend you're perfectly fine. But in these hushed early hours, prayer whispers the exact opposite. It tells you it's okay to be exhausted. It's okay to feel lost. It's okay to not have everything figured out. Here, you're not expected to be perfect. You're simply expected to be present, to come exactly as you are. And when you do, something shifts. Not always externally, but profoundly, definitively within. Because prayer at this hour doesn't alter who the divine is. It profoundly alters who you remember you are. Writing in the early morning hours isn't merely a practice, it's a sacred purge. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., when the world is hushed and the air itself feels imbued with deeper meaning, your thoughts spill out unfiltered. You don't write to impress. You don't write to be perfectly understood. You write because there's an undeniable something within you that simply refuses to stay silent any longer. In that profound silence, your pen becomes a silent witness, and the page transforms into your private confession booth. There is no judgment here. No need to sugarcoat your reality or meticulously dress your emotions in poetic language. This kind of writing is raw. It's often messy, doesn't concern itself with grammar or elegance. It just yearns to be. When the sun hasn't yet breached the horizon, your defenses are still asleep. Your mind hasn't yet donned its daily mask. You're not concerned about who might be watching, reading, or liking. You're simply pouring out memories you thought long forgotten, thoughts you didn't realize were hiding, regrets you'd meticulously tucked away beneath the busyness of life. All of it begins to surface, like dust particles finally catching the first light. Writing at this hour doesn't always make logical sense. Sometimes it rambles, sometimes it circles the same idea repeatedly. But even in that repetition, there is unexpected revelation. You start to discern patterns. You notice what consistently haunts you, what persistently calls to you, what you persistently deny. There's an undeniable intimacy in articulating your pain, your joy, your confusion into words when everyone else is asleep. It feels like sending a confidential letter to yourself across time, a poignant record of where you are, what you're genuinely feeling, and what you're truly fighting for. Some mornings, the words emerge slowly, like hesitant drops from a tired faucet. Other times, they burst forth like a storm that's been held back far too long. But regardless of the pace, every word written is a release, a tangible weight lifted from your chest, a silent sigh exhaled onto paper. And even if no one else ever reads it, you read it. And in doing so, you come to understand yourself a little more profoundly. Writing at this hour grants you the precious space to process what the frantic pace of the day rarely allows you time to feel. The things you casually brushed off, the emotions you meticulously suppressed, the questions you never had time to ask, they all resurface when the external noise finally dies down. You write not to escape them, but to bravely face them. And strangely, the more you write, the less power they hold over you. It's not therapy in the traditional sense, but it is undeniably healing, because there is immense power in naming things, in transmuting vague, elusive feelings into specific, concrete words, in drawing shadows into the light where they lose their ability to terrify you. It's not always profound. Sometimes it's nonsense. Sometimes it's just dreams, random ideas, fleeting thoughts about life, or even jokes that make no sense later. And that is perfectly okay. The ultimate goal isn't to create something perfect or even coherent. The goal is to empty yourself, to unload what your soul has been carrying, so you don't drag it, unexamined, into a brand new day. And sometimes, tucked within the chaos and scribbles, you find a sudden, brilliant flash of clarity. You write a sentence, and it hits you like a bolt of lightning. That's exactly what I've been feeling. That's precisely what I needed to hear. And the most powerful part, it came entirely from you. No one teaches you how to do this. You simply begin. You pick up a pen or open a document and you let go. You write as if nobody is reading, because in those hours, they aren't. You write as if your life depends on it, because some mornings, it truly does. This isn't journaling for the sake of productivity or posting for external validation. This is profound soul work. This is you, speaking to yourself, utterly uninterrupted. And in a world that so rarely grants you the space to be genuinely honest, that's far more than a habit. That is liberation. Stillness is a forgotten language in a world obsessed with noise. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., that ancient language begins to stir, coming back to life. There are no emails pinging, no notifications blinking, no insistent traffic rumbling in the background. Just pure, unadulterated silence. A silence so thick, so palpable, you can almost feel it wrapped around you like a comforting blanket. In that precious moment, the world demands nothing from you. You're not being pulled in 10 different directions. You're not performing, proving, or producing anything. You are simply existing, and that, in itself, is profoundly enough. The absence of external noise creates an expansive, vital space for the truth within you to finally breathe. It's as if someone has gently turned down the overwhelming volume on life, allowing you to finally hear the subtle resonance of your own voice again. When you consciously choose to sit in stillness during those hushed early hours, something deep inside you begins to realign. Thoughts that were relentlessly spinning out of control start to settle, like fine dust slowly falling to the ground. Worries lose their sharp, cutting edges. Regret ceases its screaming. The mind stops frantically racing towards the next task, the next goal, the next seductive distraction. It simply pauses. And in that sacred pause, you begin to notice things you completely missed in the rush: the persistent tension held in your shoulders for days, the subtle heaviness you've carried in your chest, the profound questions you've been skillfully avoiding. Stillness doesn't magically erase these things, but it introduces you to them in a gentler, more compassionate way. It invites you to sit with them, not necessarily to immediately solve them, but to deeply understand them. Most people instinctively shy away from stillness, equating it with emptiness. But true stillness is anything but empty. It is profoundly full. Full of presence, full of deep awareness, full of unadulterated truth. It is the very wellspring from which clarity arises. Not the kind of clarity you forcefully extract through relentless overthinking, but the kind that gently surfaces when you finally stop trying so hard. It sneaks in when you least expect it. A quiet understanding, a profound gut feeling, a sudden realization that settles into your bones like something you've always known but somehow forgot. Stillness is where the dense fog lifts. It's where answers spontaneously appear, not because you frantically chased them, but because you purposefully made room for them to arrive. In the frenetic rush of the day, it's dangerously easy to mistake mere motion for genuine progress. You meticulously check off lists, answer incessant calls, hustle relentlessly from one thing to the next. But movement devoid of clear direction is nothing more than chaotic noise. And that noise inevitably drowns out the quiet, inner compass that constantly strives to guide you. Stillness brings you gently back to that compass. It helps you pose the hard, pivotal questions. Am I moving towards something truly meaningful, or am I merely running from discomfort? Am I living a life I consciously chose, or one that was subtly chosen for me? Am I constantly reacting, or am I truly creating? These questions don't always yield immediate, definitive answers, but stillness cultivates the fertile ground for them to slowly rise and be seen. This profound kind of stillness is not a passive state. It is not laziness, nor is it an avoidance of life. It is, in fact, the most active form of presence. It's a conscious choice to be fully here, fully aware, without the urge to fix, to perform, or to escape. It can be intensely uncomfortable at first, because we are so accustomed to constant stimulation. We are, in essence, addicted to distraction. But once you commit to sitting with it long enough, you begin to crave it. You begin to trust its wisdom. And eventually, you recognize it as an unwavering source of profound inner strength. Because only when the noise finally subsides can you truly hear what your life has been patiently trying to tell you all along. It's in the stillness of those early, quiet hours that you finally realize the immense reservoir of wisdom you've been carrying within you all this time. Not wisdom gleaned from books or podcasts, but wisdom forged from your own lived experience, from your own deep intuition. You don't need anyone else to tell you who you are. You simply need to be quiet enough to remember. You begin to notice the often unseen gap between who you are currently and who you are truly becoming. Not with a pang of shame, but with a gentle, open curiosity. Stillness doesn't rush you to fix things. It grants you the grace and patience to truly understand them. It allows the truth to emerge naturally, without being relentlessly chased. And when it does emerge, it arrives gently yet powerfully, much like the first light of dawn breaking slowly, majestically, over a dark horizon. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., there exists a sacred intimacy between you and yourself. No filters, no imposed roles, no crushing weight of expectations pressing down on your shoulders. This is the precious hour when you finally meet the version of you that you so rarely get to see during the frantic pace of the day. The one who isn't frantically trying to impress, to perform, or even just to survive. It's not about proving anything at all. It's not about productivity or some elusive perfection. It is entirely about presence, about showing up for your own soul when the rest of the world is too deeply engrossed in sleep to even notice. There is no audience here. Just you. Stripped bare of the incessant noise, stripped of all pretense, standing quietly and authentically in front of your own truth. This is the moment your soul is most unguarded, most vulnerable. The masks you wear effortlessly fall away without any force or conscious effort. The elaborate social performance that consumes your day simply switches off on its own. You are not defined by being the student, the parent, the worker, the achiever. You are simply a being, a human being, not a human doing. And in that profound, quiet state, you grasp just how rare and invaluable it is to truly sit with yourself like this. We spend so much of our days outward-facing, constantly responding, reacting, running. But in these hushed early hours, everything profoundly turns inward. Your thoughts gently rise to the surface without interruption. Your emotions softly knock, instead of screaming for attention. Your deepest truth feels less like a heavy burden and more like a comforting companion. When you truly meet yourself in this hour, it's not always a pretty sight. Sometimes you're utterly exhausted. Sometimes you're riddled with anxiety. Sometimes you simply don't like what you see staring back. But that, precisely, is the point. This hour doesn't demand you to be fine. It invites you, with profound acceptance, to be honest. To sit with what is, not what you desperately wish should be. To look yourself squarely in the eyes and whisper, "Okay, let's talk." The encompassing darkness doesn't hide you. Paradoxically, it reveals you. And that revelation isn't meant to shame you, it's meant to tenderly hold you. Because when the world isn't watching, you are finally allowed to be soft. You are allowed to be profoundly confused. You are allowed to not have it all figured out. You begin to understand that this unvarnished meeting of self is the true genesis of self-healing. Not the kind of healing that's glamorized with candles and soothing mantras, but the gritty, gut-wrenching kind that demands you sit unflinchingly with your brokenness and not recoil. In that sacred space, you don't need external advice. You don't need instant answers. You simply need presence. A gentle, unwavering acknowledgement that you exist far beyond your productivity, beyond your trauma, beyond all your titles. You begin to grasp how long you've been skillfully avoiding your own gaze. How long you've been either too busy or too afraid to truly check in with the one person you spend your entire life with, you. This is also the hour when your intuition speaks its loudest. Not because it suddenly grows stronger, but because everything else around it finally goes quiet. The clamor of others' opinions, the constant barrage of distracting thoughts, the crushing weight of past failures and future worries, they all recede just enough for you to clearly hear that quiet, persistent inner voice that whispers, "This is who you are. This is what you need. This is what you are truly capable of." And hearing that voice, even if it's shaky, even if it's small, has the power to shift the entire trajectory of your day. Because it's not just guidance, it's a deep remembrance, a profound coming home to yourself. What you choose to do in this hour doesn't need to be dramatic or grand. You don't need to meditate perfectly or craft a masterpiece. Sometimes, simply sitting with a warm drink in silent contemplation is enough. Sometimes, just placing your hand gently on your heart and breathing deeply is enough. Because what matters most isn't the action you take. It's the profound fact that you showed up. That you deliberately made space. That you remembered your own name before the world tried, relentlessly, to rename you.